Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. On the undercard of Inoue versus Tapales was a fantastic battle of unbeatens. Kazuki Anaguchi, who came in with 6 wins, no draws, no defeats, and Seiya Tsutsumi, 9 wins, no draws, and let me get this straight. 9 wins, no defeats, and 2 draws. That was it. The 2 draws came in 2020 against guys who, I think one was undefeated, one was, I think, at a 16-1 record. Those were both in 2020, and they were both majority draws. So, both undefeated guys. They were fighting for, I think, something called like the Monster Tournament, which is inspired by Inoue, and I think the winner picked up a bit of a trophy as well as about 40 or 50 grand in pounds or dollars or whatever it was, however, 100 million yen or something like that. But they both gave their all in this fight, and it was very, very interesting because of the contrast in styles and also a few other contrasts as well. Now, first of all, let's talk about the 6-0 at the time anyway, Kazuki Anaguchi. 23 years old, southpaw, pretty much being groomed as one of Japan's next big stars. His last 2 opponents were undefeated. One guy had a 10-0-1 record, the other guy had a 2-0 record. He won unanimous 8-round decisions over both. Prior to that, he fought Jonathan Takonin, who is a 2-time world title challenger, I think at lower weights, light fly and fly maybe, I want to say. Certainly light fly. I remember him fighting for the light fly title. And he's at the back end of his career now, Takonin, from the Philippines, 36 years old. So he's picking up paychecks in Japan. And he got outpointed. Unanimous decision over 8 rounds. So, this kid's been brought along as a potential star. 23 years old, southpaw, 6-0 coming in. Seiya Tsutsumi is listed as an orthodox fighter, although he spent a lot of this fight against Anaguchi fighting as a southpaw. He looks to me like he's ambidextrous at the very least, if not a southpaw who sometimes fights orthodox. I don't know, to be honest. Look, I've got to be honest with you. I watch a lot of Japanese boxing, and I love a lot of these little guys. But sometimes I forget the names, the Japanese names, or I get them confused. I'll be frank with you. No xenophobia intended. It's just ignorant Englishmen, Sometimes, but they're wonderful fighters. They really are fantastic. These Japanese cards, you got to watch them. You got to pay attention to them because there's so much great action on it. All these cards. So Tsutsumi coming in with 9 wins, no defeats, and 2 draws. He probably the phrase battle hardened rings a bell. And certainly his age at 28, 5 years older than Anaguchi, is worth mentioning. In fact, I would go as far as to say that when all was said and done, this was man against boy. And the fact that Tsutsumi is probably in his prime at 28 and has his man strength and is as good as he's going to get, that kind of made the difference against Anaguchi, who was game as hell, conventionally a more conventional operator. Anaguchi looks like he can box on the back foot, but likes to come forward. But he's quite happy boxing on the back foot. Whereas Tsutsumi looks like he wants to come forward. He's got a more marauding, less refined style. Anaguchi definitely looks like a more cultured, well-schooled fighter. I can understand why they're bigging this kid up and why they probably thought he's going to probably win this fight against Tsutsumi if he uses his skills. Well, Tsutsumi, having said that he's a more marauding fighter, don't get me wrong, he's not without skills himself. In fact, he's got some very good skills. He just likes to come forward. He reminded me a little bit of Maurizio Lara, in that he's got underrated skills, but he just likes to throw himself forward all the time. And the first 2 rounds of this fight, Tsutsumi was boxing orthodox, Anaguchi southpaw. Very, very close rounds. I think Anaguchi probably edged them again on the cleaner work, a little bit more skill. Again, the word refinement springs to mind. But Tsutsumi was in the fight. Don't get me wrong at all. And in the 3rd round, there was a twist because I don't know whether there was a clash of heads. I think there might have been that I missed. And I was watching this on a stream with Japanese commentary, so I didn't. I don't speak Japanese, so I didn't understand whether they mentioned a head clash. But Tsutsumi ended up with a very bad cut across his left eyelid. It was a diagonal slice, very bad, bleeding quite profusely. And you thought, okay, this is where Anaguchi takes over. But in the fourth round, the first of no less than 4 knockdowns occurred, all against Anaguchi. Because Anaguchi, having seen the blood, thought, okay, I'll go for it now. So he really started to do some front foot work. And some of it was successful. A lot of it was being parried and taken on the gloves by Tsutsumi. But Tsutsumi was firing back. He was trying to fire between Anaguchi's assaults. And he clipped him with a... Now, I can't remember what punch landed for which knockdown. There were so many knockdowns. I want to say that... Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know which knockdown was which. I want to say that it was definitely a one-punch clip that caught Anaguchi and put him over. And he was okay, looked at his corner, said, I'm okay, got up in time, saw out the round, but a 10-8 round for Tsutsumi, no doubt about it. Now, from this, Tsutsumi built, because he dragged Anaguchi over the next couple of rounds into a dogfight, which the younger man didn't seem that keen to want to be in. That's not to say he was running. He certainly wasn't. He was firing back. Both these guys were letting their hands go. You know, good action in this fight. But you got the feeling that even though Anaguchi was still winning some rounds, Tsutsumei's pressure was kind of getting to him. And that Tsutsumi, even though he had blood coming out of his eye and everything, this was a 10 rounder, not a 12 rounder. So you thought, okay, maybe he'll run out of time. But you just got the feeling that he was going to be able to grind down Anaguchi. Now, in the 7th round, Anaguchi, by the way, I don't know whether I gave him the 6th and the 7th, but he was definitely doing well in those middle rounds. No, excuse me, the 5th and the 6th. Yeah, the 5th and the 6th, those middle rounds. I'm not sure whether I gave both to Anaguchi. But in the 7th, there was another twist. Because Anaguchi got caught, I mean clipped. It wasn't a full-blooded punch. It looked to me like it was a clip on his nose. And he went down. His legs went and he went down. There has to be a question mark over Anaguchi's chin when you go on the floor. I mean, he'd been down twice in 7 rounds. And he was having things... He was being made to work, but he wasn't being battered. He got clipped and down he goes. And you thought, okay, you know, is it a lack of man strength? I mean, flyweights mature quicker at 23. He's not that young for a flyweight. But again, you got the man versus boy feeling about this fight. The 28-year-old in his prime, Seiya Tsutsumi, just having his way with the younger Kazuki Anaguchi and being able to sort of hurt him. When he landed, he was hurting him, clip him badly, drain his energy, and drag him into a dogfight. Well, Anaguchi, to his credit, in the 8th, came back well. Despite suffering that second knockdown, he came back well. And again, it looked as if he was in the ascendancy, just as it had done in the 5th and the 6th round. Then in the 9th, over he goes again. And again, it was not from a particularly hard-looking punch. I think it was a right hand, if I'm remembering the knockdowns correctly, that sort of sent him spinning onto the ropes, and there was really nothing on it, and he just got bundled over, and it was really quite shocking the way he was going down. It was almost voluntarily, or it looked voluntarily. Now, again, in the 10th round, he suffered 3 knockdowns. He would probably have won this fight without suffering these knockdowns. In the 10th round at the start, again, Tsutsumi is going forward, but Anaguchi, by the way, I should point out before I move to the 10th round, that 9th round was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because after the knockdown, Anaguchi was coming back and battering Tsutsumi, and then Tsutsumi actually finished the round strong, so it was one of those, pendulum rounds. But in the 10th round, again, Anaguchi, at this point, I think he was exhausted, I really do. And Tsutsumi, blood, again, pouring out of his eye. They couldn't contain the blood flow, swellings. He looked like he'd been hit by a truck, whereas Anaguchi didn't. Anaguchi didn't have a cut on him. Started off well in the 10th round. It was probably Anaguchi's round, I would say. You know, he was managing to control Tsutsumi, and maybe the blood was bothering Tsutsumi. But right at the end of the round, what happens? Tsutsumi clips him. Again, it was not a major punch. I think the exhaustion just put Anaguchi on the floor. I think he fell onto all fours. A fourth knockdown of the fight. So another 10-8 round. And Seiya Tsutsumi ran out a unanimous decision winner. Had it not been for the 4 knockdowns, I mean, I can't remember I think there were a couple of, I don't know what the fuck they were. But they were close. There was, I think I'm right in saying Anaguchi would have won the fight. But I'd have to check on that. But there's no doubt that Tsutsumi, I mean, he was tougher. He was mentally extremely strong. Again, battle hardened is the phrase that springs to mind. He did what he does well. He implemented his game plan, dragged this kid into a dogfight, and just, you know, a baptism by fire. And that's what it was for Anaguchi. Again, there has to be a question mark over his chin. He was going over way too easy from just some punches that didn't even catch him cleanly. They clipped him. The one on the nose, for example, which might have been the second knockdown, I couldn't believe when he went over. I thought he slipped. You can say that the 4th knockdown in the 10th round was sheer exhaustion, perhaps. And also in the corner afterwards, Anaguchi, he staggered back to his corner and then sort of went onto his haunches and could barely stand back up to sit down on his stool. He was absolutely shattered, even though he didn't have a mark on him. And Tsutsumi looked like, again, he'd been in a knife fight, but he was fine. He was tired, but he was there. He was hanging tough. He looked like he could do another 2 rounds. So this was a great fight. It really was a terrific fight, especially that 9th round. And I think it's on Daily Motion, so go over and have a look at it on dailymotion.com. I want to see more of both of these guys. I've seen them both before. I've seen Anaguchi a couple of times. To say he was found out might be a little bit harsh. You could say that this was a bit too much too soon, perhaps. Tsutsumi is probably as good as he's going to get, which is good. So I think he deserves a world title shot. No problem with that at all. But Anaguchi has to regroup. He's young enough to come again. But I would slow the progress down a bit. You don't want too many of these fights, or it will take too many years off you. But it was a very, very good fight. Chief support to Inoue versus Tapales, and a better fight. Even though I enjoyed Inoue and Tapales, this was a better fight, trust me. Go and have a look at it on Daily Motion. Anyway, if you saw the fight and you've got any comments, leave them below. Let me know what you think. Comments below, like I say, I'll read them. Don't get a chance to answer all of them because there's just too many these days. But I do read all your comments, trust me. Like the video if you liked it. And please, if you're new to the channel, you could subscribe. That would be a big deal. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Hope you had a good Christmas. Catch you later. Bye for now.